For several weeks in August, it seemed like the Amazon was on fire. The largest rainforest in the world, a key defence against global warming, pockmarked with blazes. Satellite imagery showed that in the Brazilian Amazon there were 80% more fires than in 2018, across an area the size of Western Europe. And all this under the watch of the recently elected President Jair Bolsonaro, a right-wing leader who's backed by the farmers and the loggers that are blamed for illegally clearing land. Had he given the green light to destroy the forest? That was the fear as global outrage grew.
L'Amazonie, c'est notre bien commun.
The Amazon belongs to us all, said French President Emmanuel Macron ahead of a meeting of the G7 group of industrialized nations. Our house is on fire, he tweeted. There were worldwide protests in London, Lima,
La voz de nosotros, de toda Latinoamérica.
Paris.
Le patriarcat capitaliste est en train d'assassiner l'avenir du monde.
Hollywood celebrities had their say too.
It's absurd that we're at this stage in our lives, so it's concerning.
It's incredibly tragic. I think that I immediately felt depressed.
Environmental activist Greta Thunberg said the fires were yet more evidence of an elder generation's betrayal of its responsibility to the planet.
How dare you!
But Bolsonaro stood firm, telling the United Nations the issue had been sensationalized. Countries from the developed world have no right to lecture Brazil, given they grew rich by destroying their own forests, he said. He sent the army to the region to fight the fires, which by October had been largely extinguished. The president has stated that indigenous people in the Amazon and even environmental groups had begun the blazes and that Brazil was the victim of fake news.
O Brasil foi duramente atacado por chefe de Estado europeu sobre as questões amazônicas. Problemas que acontecem anos após anos, que é da cultura por parte do povo nativo. Queimar, depois de derrubar uma parte da sua propriedade para o plantio, para a sobrevivência.
But as the smoke still lingers, fundamental questions remain unanswered. Are we getting close to a tipping point in the Amazon where man-made destruction means the forest begins to die on its own? And can Brazil, a continent-sized country that is destined to play a key role in feeding the world over the next century, do that without destroying a resource that helps make our planet habitable? Acre State in remote northwestern Brazil. This is the research base for Dr. Foster Brown, an American environmental geochemist. He says he's seen clear evidence that the temperature in the forest is rising.
The base temperature has been increasing over the last couple of decades. That makes it the forest more susceptible to burning because it increases what is called evapotranspiration. It dries out faster.
The explanation for that rise is most likely global warming from the industrialized world. One consequence is when fires are started here, the virgin rainforest itself is becoming more vulnerable.
When it gets so dry that the forest, instead of being a barrier, becomes kindling. When that happens, as it did in 2005 and 2010, you can get tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of hectares damaged by fire.
Damage this ecosystem, he says, and you will likely change the weather.
If you see a tree, you're also seeing a water pump. It's pumping groundwater into the atmosphere, and that is contributing to rainfall in other parts of the Amazon and in southern Brazil. So if we cut down this, we may have increasing problems in terms of rainfall during the dry season in particular.
This is the tipping point theory, that as the forest heats up and is cut down, there will come a moment where its own recycled water supply runs low and the trees begin to wither away without human intervention, a process that would likely be unstoppable.
So the trees require rainfall, but they also are associated with the production of rainfall. We have a complex system, and if we're in the process of changing that complex system, we will have to live with the consequences. And the consequences may not be very enjoyable.
Since the 1970s, when roads began to be built into the previously barely penetrated forest, 17% of it has been lost. This century, the rate of deforestation, a continuous process, has gone up and down. In the early 2000s, it spiked. One reason was the global soybean price, driven by Chinese demand, soared, and farmers sought new land. Since 2012, the pace of tree felling has creeped up again as property laws in the Amazon were loosened, sparking a speculative land grab. For Rubens Hicopuro, former Brazilian environment minister, there is no question that the Amazon is under grave threat.
Whenever officials from the Bolsonaro government are asked about the situation in the Amazon, particularly deforestation and the fires that we've had in the last few months, they say it's not as bad as it was in the early 2000s.
Of course it was much worse some 20 or 30 years ago, but the situation had improved considerably. There was a moment, particularly after 2009, when the rate of deforestation was falling very sharply. And then it picked up this year with a vengeance. This new government, when it took over, it sent a very clear message that he would no longer fight illegal fires and illegal deforestation.
President Bolsonaro's power base in the decades before he became president was the so-called guns and beef lobby in the country's Congress, pro-agriculture and against the rival environmentalist lobby. His first executive order as president was to make the Agriculture Ministry, instead of the Environment Ministry, responsible for deciding which land should be given over to indigenous groups. The move was later reversed by Congress, but many took it as a clear message that farmers mattered to the new government much more than the indigenous people did.
They think there is no reason whatsoever for the Amazon to be preserved. They want to open roads, to open railways, to colonize the region.
Soy, coffee, beef.
In recent decades, Brazil has transformed itself to become one of the most important food exporters in the world. Its farming lobby says it will defend that position.
O Brasil é país soberano, independente, e nós temos orgulho do nosso país, muito, inclusive orgulho da nossa floresta. Agora nós não vamos ficar aqui submissos a vontades econômicas de outros que querem inviabilizar a atividade econômica principal do nosso país, que é a agropecuária.
Souza argues that environmentalists and foreigners with their own financial interests are determined to hold Brazil back.
Nós passamos a produzir em 30 anos 3 vezes mais em toneladas por hectare do que nós produzimos. Isso fez com que o Brasil deixasse de ser importador de alimentos e passasse a ser autossuficiente, e com a expansão agropecuária no centro-oeste, na região de Cerrado e nas regiões de floresta como a da Amazônia, faz com que o Brasil se torne grande produtor mundial.
He says there's actually no need to cut down any more forest.
E nós somos extremamente contra o desmatamento ilegal e queremos que, de fato, aquele que desmata ilegalmente, que põe fogo na floresta, ele tem uma pena que venha desestimular qualquer outro a fazer isso. Porque isso é crime. Nós não precisamos de mais áreas para a pecuária. Basta as áreas que nós temos que nos tornar mais eficientes.
It's a solution that everyone we spoke to agreed upon, that Brazil can use the cleared land it already has more productively rather than fell virgin forest.
We already have an enormous reservoir of land that has been degraded. So we no longer need to destroy forests.
But doubts remain as to whether the fact that the experts agree that it need not be destroyed means the Amazon is safe. Particular concern surrounds the President's view of those that live in the region, around 850,000 indigenous people that have long been seen as the traditional custodians of the land. Bolsonaro, perhaps being deliberately provocative, said in 2017 that indigenous people would like to live like other Brazilians. They really want electricity, television, even blonde girlfriends and internet, he said. Comments like that dismay those seeking to protect the forest, including Marina Silva, a one-time presidential candidate and former environment minister. She is from an indigenous background.
O presidente Bolsonaro, infelizmente, as comunidades indígenas, para elas viverem bem, elas precisam de seus territórios para a preservação da sua cultura, do seu modo tradicional de vida.
It is true that the poor, the miserable people in the Amazon have to see their lives improved. And I think there are ways of improving their lives without touching the forest. The people who are destroying the forest, they couldn't care less for those poor, primitive people in the Amazon.
So is there any way the world and the current government in Brazil can agree on a system to stop the forest being cut down? It was in the 1990s that a global fund was proposed whereby Brazil and other Amazon nations would be compensated by the developed world for preserving the forest. Although some countries, notably EU member states and Norway, have participated in the scheme, it's never been supported on the scale first envisaged. One reason for that has been consistent, strong resistance from the Brazilian military, which is closely allied to President Bolsonaro, to the idea that any form of control of the Amazon might be handed over to foreign powers. But there is another pressure on Brazil, which may be a more powerful incentive for it to change its ways: trade. The worrying images of destruction in the Amazon have led to international calls from Europe and the United States to ban exports from Brazil on the grounds that they are environmentally unfriendly.
Brazil is worried, is deeply concerned with the possibility of a backlash against Brazilian exports.
The Amazon is believed to contain a fourth of all the world's terrestrial species. It is a bank of biodiversity unlike any other. This, more than its soil or its minerals, potentially has huge economic value. Within this treasure trove of life, there may be solutions to some of the challenges mankind faces, from natural fungicides to as yet unknown medical breakthroughs.
We also have an incredible biodiversity in the forest that is not being researched, it hasn't been analyzed, and can provide a tremendous opportunities for advancement and economic growth.
Stopping the relentless destruction of the Amazon in Brazil and elsewhere is a huge challenge, even if it makes long-term economic sense. But evidence is growing that allowing this to continue will have a cost that we are only just beginning to fathom.
A floresta é uma coluna de sustentação do equilíbrio do planeta, mas também é um gatilho de destruição. Ela não é o pulmão do mundo, ela é um estoque de carbono, ela estoca carbono. E se isso for liberado para a atmosfera, você vai desencadear um processo de desequilíbrio sistêmico do planeta, com o problema da escassez de água e, ao mesmo tempo, aumento de temperatura, derretimento das grandes geleiras, aquecimento dos oceanos, perda de toda a biologia marinha. É o fim.